place in the book of Daniel chapter 9 tonight. Daniel chapter 9 tonight. We started last Wednesday night studying a little bit about the Antichrist. And tonight we're going to consider, again, about the nationality of the Antichrist. But we saw last week that there's the Antichrists, plural, and Antichrist, singular. When we find the Antichrist singular, normally he's speaking about the fellow that's going to come during the tribulation period. But the Antichrist talks about those who are out there today who are Antichrist, who are opposed to him. Those, again, who are using the wrong versions of the Bible many times are Antichrist because they're using those to teach false doctrines and everything. Then we saw several names that we find in the Bible for the Antichrist: the little horn, the prince that comes, the abomination of desolation, the man of sin, the son of perdition, that wicked, the Antichrist, and the beast. And tonight, number 3, we want to consider the nationality of the Antichrist. Now, down through the ages, and of course, back during the 70s when I was a teenager, and at the time when revival conferences or prophecy conferences were kind of heavy towards the end of the 70s there, of course, there was a lot of speculation, as there is today, who the Antichrist is going to be. Of course, back when I was a youngster, it was always Henry Kissinger. I don't even know if he's still here. I meant to try and look it up the other day and see if he is or not. But he was somebody who was prominent during the Nixon administration, I believe, if I remember correctly. And they always claimed that he was going to be the Antichrist. Of course, down through the ages, it's been President Obama, President Clinton, and so forth and so on. But tonight we'll find out that they can be considered to be one of the Antichrists, plural, because, again, they are opposed to the things of Christ. But as far as their nationality, it's not going to allow them to fit the cue of being the Antichrist during the tribulation period. And Daniel chapter 9, verses 26 and 27, it says, "And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and unto the end of the war desolations are determined. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of that week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that is determined, shall be poured upon the desolate." Now, number 3, again, the nationality of the Antichrist, letter A. The Antichrist will arise out of and rule over an end-time aspect of the ancient Roman Empire. The ancient Roman Empire. Now, the connection between the Antichrist and the Roman Empire is made 3 times in the prophecies of Daniel. Now, he's called the Prince of the People who destroyed Jerusalem and the Jewish temple after Christ's death, and we're shared a few thoughts about this right here now. In verse 26 and Daniel 9:26, he says, "And after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off." Now that there's a prophecy that Daniel's giving about Christ's crucifixion. And of course we know that took place nearly 2,000 years ago. And then the rest of the verse says, "But not for himself, and the people of the princes that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood, and with the end of the war desolations are determined." We note here again that there's chaos that followed the crucifixion of Christ. We know about 40 years after he was crucified, a little less than that probably, where he was around 70 A.D., again, when the Roman Empire, with, of course, Titus being the emperor, of course, came in, they destroyed the city of Jerusalem, they destroyed the city, they destroyed the sanctuary, they destroyed the temple, and did a lot of major destruction to the nation of Israel there during that time. And then in verse 27 says, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week." And we know that once the rapture of the church takes place, that the Antichrist will come upon the scene. And when he comes upon the scene, he's going to confirm a covenant, and he's going to promise them 7 good years. He's going to promise them 7 years of peace. And that's what he's going to come and portray before them. And the Antichrist, of course, you know, is a deceiver, and he is going to appear friends with Israel during the first 3.5 years of the tribulation period. There'll be a time of peace. The temple will be restored. The worship will be restored in there. And everything's going to appear to go on like normal. But Daniel's going to go on to say there, For in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. In the middle. Now this week here is talking about 70 years. Daniel's talking about his 70 years of prophecy. And he's dealing with the last week. And in that last week, that week, of course, refers to 7 years, which refers to the tribulation period. And the midway point, again, things are going to come to a halt right there. And he's no longer going to keep his word. And he's going to stop the Jews from observing their religion as they were allowed to up to this point. He says there also that he shall cause the sacrifice and oblations to cease. Again, he's not going to keep his word. Basically, he's going to overspread abominations. The Antichrist is going to desecrate the worship within the temple during that time. Now, in the earlier chapters here of 7 and 8, leading up, of course, to chapter 9 here, there was a Roman emperor by the name of Antioch Epiphanes, and he is a type of the Antichrist. And that Antioch Epiphanes, being that type of Christ, we see that he was doing a lot of things there against the nation of Israel during those times. And again, that will remind us of how the Antichrist is going to act once the midway of the tribulation period comes to being. He's going to destroy everything. And he goes on to say, and for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. That consummation refers to the end of the Antichrist and the end of that week here, and the end of Daniel's 70 weeks are going to come to a close here. And so again, we see here what the Antichrist is going to do when he comes. Now, what he's talking about here is he's talking here about the nation of Rome, or the country of Rome, as we know it. This, of course, was Rome. The Roman armies, of course, destroyed Jerusalem in 70 A.D. They were led by Titus the general, who later would become the emperor. And the objects from the destroyed temple, together with captive Jews, was taken to Rome and paraded through the streets as a show of force. And again, it was a very terrible time that the nation went through a few short years after Christ was crucified. And again, we realize again that those are going to be some of the things that will be seen again also as well during that time. Go back to Daniel chapter 2, if you would. Daniel chapter 2. In Daniel chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar is going to have a vision, and of course we'll be studying this a little bit more on Sunday mornings. But in Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar had a vision. He could not remember that vision, that dream that he had, and we know that he called for all of his wise men and asked them and said, now you tell me what my dream was and tell me what the interpretation is. And the wise man goes, oh no, king, it doesn't work that way. You tell us the dream and we tell you the interpretation. The king says, no, it doesn't work that way. I don't remember my dream. You tell me my dream and you tell me the interpretation. And he said, if you guys don't do it, I'm going to put you all to death. The word came to Daniel. Daniel went and spoke to the king and said, hey, give me and my friends a little bit of time and I'll come back with an answer. Just give me a little bit of time and let me do this here. And so he had a vision here of a statue that was going to be built there. And we're told this empire will continue to exist during the days of Antichrist and will be destroyed by God's kingdom. And Daniel chapter 2 and verse 40, he says, and the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as the iron breaketh in pieces, and so doeth all things, and as iron that breaketh all things, shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas thou sawest the feet and the toes, parts of the potter's clay, and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided, but there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as mixed as thou sawest the iron mixed with the miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas thou sawest iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, that they shall not cleave one to another, even as the iron is not mixed with the clay. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to another people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all the kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. So again, we realize that though Rome's going to appear to be a very strong and formidable foe during this time, it's not going to be as strong in that time in the end days as what it was back during the time here in the book of Daniel, where it would have the great strength. Now, the legs are the part that speaks about the former Roman Empire, and its division into eastern and western portions. Whereas the feet of iron mixed with clay and the 10 toes signify the end-time Roman Empire that will be ruled by Antichrist and, of course, will be destroyed by Christ's return. The Antichrist is depicted as arising out of a revived Roman Empire, as Daniel teaches us. Look over in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7, verses 19 and 20. He said, "Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron, and his nails of brass, which devoured, brake in pieces, and stamped in residue with his feet, and of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the others which came up, and before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows." So the Antichrist here is depicted as coming out of that revived Roman Empire, and that fourth beast corresponds to the fourth kingdom in Daniel chapter 2. And so the Antichrist will arise after the 10 kings as an end-time Roman Empire. The 10 horns of Daniel 7 correspond to the 10 toes of Daniel 2, signifying 10 kings or rulers in the end times. Letter B, the Antichrist is also called the Assyrian. The Antichrist is also called the Assyrian. If you would look over to Micah chapter 5. It's just past the book of Jonah. Micah chapter 5. Of course, in verse 2, we're given a prophecy of Christ's birth. And then in verse 4 and 5, it says, "And he shall stand and feed in the strength of the Lord, in the majesty of the name of the Lord his God, and they shall abide, for now shall he be great unto the ends of the earth. And this man shall be the peace when the Assyrian," there he's named, shall come into our land, and when he shall tread in our palaces, then we shall raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 principal men. That Assyrian is going to arise here. Micah describes the defeat of the Antichrist at the hand of the Messiah, but he also describes him here as being the Assyrian. Now, look back, if you would, in Ezra chapter 6. Go back to the book of Ezra chapter 6. Ezra chapter 6 and verse 22. And Ezra 6 and verse 22 says, "And kept the feast of unleavened bread 7 days with joy, for the Lord had made them joyful, and turned the heart of the king of Assyria unto them, to strengthen their hands in the work of the house of God, the God of Israel." Now this verse here explains and it confirms Daniel's prophecy about the Antichrist's national character. The king of Assyria, referred to by Ezra here, was Darius of the Medo-Persian Empire. Now God referred to him here as being an Assyrian. Now in the days of Israel's king, we realize the first empire that made world domination was, again, the Assyrian Empire. And basically it was the Assyrian Empire that conquered the northern part of Israel, and it was the Babylonians that, of course, captured Judah in the southern part there. Now from the Assyrian Empire was the Babylonians, the Medes and Persians, then Greece, and then Rome was the order of the world powers from the time of the kings onward. They conquered one another and occupied the same great territory to some extent, though they varied greatly in their size and power. So basically, again, as they kind of went downhill a little bit, once Babylon probably was one of the peaks there, and then the Medo-Persian, then from there the Greece was not as strong, and then of course the Roman Empire, the longest, was probably one of the more powerful of those kingdoms that was there. Now each of these kingdoms conquered one another and occupied the same territory, just a little bit difference in size and power. In God's eyes, these ancient kingdoms had the same idolatrous spirit and moral character, and formed the one great vision of pagan rebellion described in the vision there of Daniel chapter 2. So in God's eyes, all the ancient pagan kingdoms that arose in Mesopotamia are described by Daniel as the Assyrians. This was true, of course, of the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medes, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. It would be true for Greece and Rome as well, since they are part of the same image and the prophetic vision. The foundation of the Assyria goes back to Nimrod and Asher. Now, we won't turn back there, but if you go back to Genesis chapter 10, you'll find again that Nimrod again founded Babel, and his associate Asher founded Nineveh, which was the capital of that area there. And basically, that's where Assyria and Babylon and these nations kind of ruled from most of the time. Now, these characters were in one spirit and objective and character. Being the beginning of the devil's world system, the forerunners of Antichrist, end-time Babylon. Of course, we know in chapter 11, we have the Tower of Babel that Nimrod built, and he was trying to get his way up into heaven, of course, by works there. And, of course, that was the beginning of the Babylonian Empire. Both Asher and Nimrod were deified as gods of these empires, and Asher continued to be worshipped as the sun god all the way down to the time of the Roman Empire. In Ezra and Nehemiah's day, the Persian palace at Susa or Shushan had an image of Asher as the sun god warrior with his bow. And today, that particular image there is on display in the Louvre in Paris. Letter C, and this is a question that a lot of people are questioning today, the Antichrist as a Muslim. We're not going to turn it, but when you go to Revelation chapter 17, we find the great whore there, and a description given there that was given in the Bible days pictured, of course, Rome. Now we realize there are some folks today who teach, well, it's no longer Rome, but it is education, because education has 7 pillars or 7 mounts that it's built upon. Other folks will say, well, gee, it's Islam, because Islam has their 7 pillars or their 7 mounts that they're built upon. And one of the common things we hear in the world today, again, is that the Antichrist is going to be a Muslim. Let us see the Antichrist as a Muslim with a question mark. There's a small movement today that sees the Antichrist, of course, as a Muslim who will arise from the Muslim nations. And that's one of the reasons that we have folks that claim President Obama, with him being of that religious persuasion, that again, that he is going to be the Antichrist. But of course, from what we've seen in Scripture so far, he's got to be somebody there from the area of Assyria and have ties to the Roman Empire in order to do so. We do know, though, that Islam has supposedly joined forces with Catholicism. They become good friends. The Pope and the head imam there of Islam supposed to become good friends and everything. But still, from the Scriptures, we'll find out that he cannot be a Muslim. The Muslim prophecy, instead of being developed from the right interpretation of Bible prophecies themselves, and again, they're not based upon the Scriptures, based upon their teachings. We do not believe that the Antichrist or his false prophet will be a Muslim. The prophecies in Daniel are too clear on the fact that the Antichrist will rise from the ancient Roman Empire. And the efforts to explain away these prophecies, again, as they have tried to do for years now, has been entirely unsuccessful. First, the chronology of the image in Daniel chapter 2 points against to the Roman Empire. Assyria, Babylon, Greece, Media-Persia, then Greece, and then, of course, the Roman Empire, the 2 legs. The 4 kingdoms of Daniel follow chronologically. The image is one, and each subsequent aspect connects with the previous one. And we're specifically told the identity of the first 3, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. These followed one another chronologically. And the reasonable conclusion is that the 4th kingdom is the Roman Empire, since it captured Greece. Now in that statue, and we'll be seeing this more on Sunday mornings here in a few weeks, the gold head speaks of the Babylonian Empire. The silver chest and arms speak of the Medo-Persian Empire. The bronze belly and thighs speak of the Grecian Empire. And the iron legs speak of the Roman Empire, again, which captured Greece. The Ottoman Empire, on the other hand, was founded by Osman in the early 1300s AD, nearly 1400 years after Greece was conquered by Rome. The earliest Muslim empires were founded in the 8th and 9th century. a millennium after the fall of the Greece to Rome. Secondly, the prophecy of Daniel's 70 weeks. Daniel identifies the Antichrist as the prince of the people that shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. That people was most definitely the Romans, who in 70 AD, again, Titus destroyed Jerusalem and the Jewish temple under the leadership of Titus. And of course, not long after that, he would become the Roman emperor. This key prophecy tells us that the Antichrist will arise probably out of the European country and the old Roman Empire, and not from a Muslim country. Though the Muslims captured Jerusalem in 637 from the Byzantines, they never destroyed a Jewish temple. It never ceased to exist more than 550 years earlier. The Roman Empire fits the prophecy of Daniel perfectly, where the Antichrist is going to come from. It is a kingdom that conquered Greece and was divided into two major portions, the two legs. And it is the kingdom that continues until the end of the Antichrist. And if you go to Revelation chapter 17 and read 17 and 18, you'll find out that the description there pretty much describes Rome and the renewed Roman Empire that will take place during the time of the Antichrist. It has continued in the Holy Roman Empire and in modern Europe. The Jews are making preparation for this event even now. And the Antichrist will make it possible somehow for the Jewish temple to be rebuilt, since he will operate in the power of the devil. We know who is the god of this world. And of course, we realize, they say, even though that the Dome of the Rock is there, there is still room and place again for the temple to be built there on the site where it previously was. Or people have even said that that will be destroyed and the temple will be built there. But we know that, again, the Jews are all prepared to do so. They've got everything in place ready to go. They know where all the furniture is for the temple. They know, again, they have the priests' clothing's been made and everything. And all the things have been put in order for them to be ready to establish it. And they're just waiting again for the rapture of the church to happen so the Antichrist can come and they can get that temple and their temple worship going once again. So we find a solution to the age-old animosity between Israel and the Muslims. At the beginning of his reign, the Antichrist will be acclaimed to be the great problem solver and a man who will bring peace to the earth. And of course, we know that's what the world's looking for. They're looking for peace. But then again, it's going to be short-lived for 3.5 years, and then all hell's going to be poured out on this earth, as things are going to go downhill very quickly in those last 3.5 years. There are many details of end-time events that are not spelled out in biblical prophecy, and we have to be content with the light that we have and not speculate beyond this. And so anybody who speculates that he's coming from any place other than the Roman Empire in the European continent, in that particular area there, again, is speculating outside of the biblical prophecy that we have today. So a little interesting thought there about that. And then next week we'll look at some of the types of the Antichrist that we find in the Scriptures, Lord willing. And then we'll see what else the Lord has for us there. We'll go ahead and get into our prayer time tonight.